Two, one, zero.
Real people, real issues, real life. Talk Recovery Radio. Live from the heart of the downtown east side, it's Talk Recovery Radio with Giuseppe Ganci and Darren Gaylor on Vancouver's Co-op Radio, CFRO 100.5 FM. From the streets to the studio, bringing you addiction recovery stories from real people with lived experience and real experts on today's issues. Tune in live every Thursday, noon to 1. Powered by New West Recovery. Real people, real issues, real life. Talk Recovery Radio.
And good afternoon, Vancouver. Hello, this is Giuseppe Ganci and my co-host, Mr. Darren Gaylor. Hey, Darren, how's it going?
Life is good. Life is good. Giuseppe, you're fantastic. You're amazing.
Wow, why you got to start off like that?
You get us on the air. You get us on the air.
Today's been a really crazy day. And
I just have to sit down at my kitchen table and open my laptop. I mean, I can only imagine what you're doing on your end. So.
Well, October, what month are we in? We're still in September.
It's September still, yeah.
It's, end of the season. COVID's really thrown everything apart. As you saw in the intro video, Talk Recovery Radio is brought to you by New West Recovery, last door in Westminster House. And we just got a lot of things that go on throughout the year. Even though COVID happened, we still did Recovery Day, as you know, from last week's show. But in the middle of all this, Amazon has really pulled through in giving back to the early recovery community, we're getting donations and so forth, and we're creating like this Amazon room where we can give people that are in early recovery items that they may need, like dish soap and laundry soap and TV, whatever the case may be. We have a lot of variety of items. So just, I not only do I have a full-time job, now I've become this like Amazon clerk. So I'm gonna call Jeff Bezos up and say, hey, I got some suggestions for you. But me, Jordan, and Parker, we're just categorizing everything because we really want the right people to get this stuff. And it's wonderful, there's this big thing on social media on how, Amazon killed Main Street, and it's one of those things. Amazon's being a corporate citizen, and they got a big market share, but they're given back to communities, and we were one of the lucky charities that got accepted to be given back to. So I want to send a huge thank you out there. And the reason I wanted to bring it up, Darren, is a lot of people, when they think of it, giving to charities in the world of addiction and mental health, it's usually given to the food lines and people that are in active addiction, and the downtown east side gets how much money per day, and then somebody goes to treatment and all of a sudden everything stops. It's just like, no more free socks for you, and no more, no nothing, no free food. They give cell phones to people that are still using drugs in the downtown east side. I don't know if people know that, but there's a phone program. And I remember that I got asked, do I know anybody that needs phone? And I'm like, yeah, a bunch of people that are 3 months clean that have no money. Have you ever thought of that? And there's still no program for new people in recovery for cell phones. They nodded their heads and said that's a really good idea in a stakeholder meeting, but nothing ever happened. So the idea that Amazon is actually giving back to people in early recovery, because going to Save-On or Walmart and buying that first laundry soap and first this, first that, first towels, first pots and pans, it's like a $400 trip that a lot of people have a hard time making up first and last month's rent. So that's who this is going to help. So we're really grateful for that. And we're still figuring out the distribution plan between our alumni and friends and all that. But yeah.
Your audio connection's causing a little bit of a scratch. But yeah, you know what? Like I've always had a little bit of a bitter taste in my mouth since hearing of Jeff Bezos, trips to space and how much he makes and what the employees. I mean, I'm sure I don't think we're giving him any credit. I'm sure there's somebody, a few rows underneath him that deserves all the credit for the relationship they've developed with you guys.
The gifts are great, but really it's the idea of just, supporting. Addiction is a chronic relapsing disease. Why we don't help people not relapse has always puzzled me. We really focus on keeping people alive, which is really important. But how do we make it give somebody the best opportunity when they're done their inpatient programs? And really, there's not a lot of support out there, unless you got a great sponsor and you're part of a recovery community. It's like, okay, bye. We'll wait till you relapse until you come back. I don't know. So let's focus on people in recovery. Helping people stay in recovery is a priority. Part of this show and why we do this show on a weekly basis. I don't have a mouse on this laptop. So that's why we're a couple minutes late. I'm on a new device today, but we talk recovery every Thursday, noon to 1. It's our 7th year of doing shows, so that's exciting. Hundreds of guests and thousands of listeners. We're on Vancouver Co-op Radio, 100.5 FM. Shout out to Vancouver Co-op Radio for letting us give space. And we had a horse online for a couple of seconds there. I think we lost Rand. Oh, that's too bad. Our guest is having some technical difficulties, so let's see if he comes back online. And I can just keep talking.
I mean, there's lots to talk about. I mean, we have Rand on for the full show, but just a heads up, I think this is one of the most important topics. Like we talk a lot about addiction, substance use, solutions, and recovery-oriented systems of care to deal with addictions. And what we're talking about is an individual where that's already, consumed and taken over their life. And I think we've thrown around the word prevention a little bit on a few of our topics, especially those guests that we've had on that deal specifically with youth, which Rand is going to be. Oh, there's Rand.
There he is. Yes.
Yeah. So we're gonna.
I don't know what the heck happened there, but I'm back.
You know what?
The
Good Zoom for you.
eye of the horse. It has some sort of meaning.
Yeah. Right now, we got a horse on air.
We're talking recovery with Rand Teed. Rand is an addictions counselor, prevention specialist, and now an author. And his book is Which Way to Turn: Understanding Adolescent Substance Use. And this is a guide for parents, teachers, and healthcare professionals. I mean, you have 40 years of experience, a BA and a bachelor's of education, internationally certified prevention specialist, certified addictions counselor, and you've also developed the drug class program being offered in many Regina High Schools. And we want to talk about all of this. I was just saying to Giuseppe, I think this is one of the most important topics, because when we talk about youth and we talk about addiction, we're talking about the beginnings, like the ability of prevention and education and, intervening, before we're dealing with a 40-year-old all consumed drug addict. There's so many more, I hope, opportunities when we're talking about youth, but they may not be, viable options. So they may not be known. And I mean, personally out here in BC, I don't know of many in high school programs that are dealing with this. And, we talk about how important prevention is, but it just hasn't been implemented out this way. So many parents are watching this show, listening to this program. And the question that came to mind is, first off, is for the parent, how do we tell if our child's using, which is an often asked question. But I think if you're already at that point with the parent, isn't it a bigger issue of, what that change of behavior is? Once we say there's a drug problem, there's a focus on how do we get them off drugs, and we ignore what's happening socially for this young guy, what's happening at school, what's happening, at home. How responsible are the parents at this point? Are we asking the wrong questions, Rand, when we're asking what do I got to do about the drug problem that my child has?
Well, yeah, yes and no.
Okay.
the drug problems are typically a symptom of something else. Kids, if we look at the diverse childhood experience research, and I talk quite a bit about that in the book, kids that grow up in difficult situations, and it doesn't have to be extreme. It doesn't have to be like a totally crazy situation, but kids who aren't getting enough attention, kids who are pushed aside because of family business stuff, or just not really engaged in getting checked on, how are you doing, what's going on, start to feel anxiety. And one of the fortunate or unfortunate things that drugs, including alcohol, do is they block that emotional response that we're feeling, and typically, if it's something negative, it becomes instantly attractive to that reward system. I mean, a really good example is, if somebody's pretty shy and they're standing around at a party and somebody gives them a drink, and whether they really want to or not, they consume that alcohol or smoke some weed or whatever, it changes their emotional response, and they will feel better. And then that becomes a solution to a problem for them. Adolescent brains are in a really rich developmental phase, particularly about important social learning, and drug use hijacks that really quickly. I know, like, I've been in lots of treatment centers doing lectures and stuff, and one of the questions I ask is, how many of you started using before you were 17? And 95% of the hands go up in the air.
Right.
So,
unbeknownst to their folks, most likely.
Well, yeah. I mean, like, I started when I was 12.
Right.
And it took me a while before I got caught, but I got caught, and then we just get good at hiding it because it's already become really important to us.
Now, that being said, like, I mean, you've worked with so many youth. Like, just generally speaking, how natural is the experimenting phase, with substances? Like, is that something that should be, like, dealt with extreme consequences and the wagging the finger? Like how should a parent approach just hearing of an experimental sort of situation?
Well, experimenting is when you do something once.
Okay.
Anything else is no longer an experiment. You're doing it because you like it.
Right on.
I
was experimenting for a long time.
No, you weren't.
You said a couple of things. If I can just jump in for a sec.
Of course you can.
Getting caught, hiding it, not letting your parents know. I'm going to go down a different path for this next question. A lot of people out there are talking about stigma kills, and we need to normalize drug use so you don't have to hide. And like, there's the poster that went around a couple of years ago, use with your best friends, don't use alone. And some mom was like, I really don't want my daughter using with someone because she's young. And the mom was a bad person for saying that in the social media threads, because she doesn't want, if a daughter goes to her and says, I want to use, can you watch me? The mom's like, I don't want my daughter watching people use drugs. And the mom was the villain. So what path are we going down? Like, how does a mom or a dad talk to their kid about drugs? Because we got two streams, and I think you know what I'm talking about. So
I know exactly what you're talking about.
So
I've had those same discussions.
What's your response to that? To a mom,
well,
like, look, I think my daughter's using drugs. What do I do?
Well, I mean, there's a couple answers to the start of the question is, what do we do to avoid those situations? And education about understanding what drugs do to brains and brain development I think is really helpful. I do a ton of that in schools. And I've had lots and lots of kids come up to me afterwards, and it needs to be done non-judgmentally, which apparently I'm pretty good at. Non-judgmentally, strong science behind it, no finger wagging, and a really clear explanation of, okay, if you do this, this is what's going to happen to your brain, and this is how that's going to affect your behavior, your choices, and those kinds of things. And that needs to start probably around 11 or 12. And I've had lots of kids come up to me afterwards and say, that was really helpful. I'm not going to do that because I value my brain. And there's no shaming of drugs. There's no shaming of people who do drugs. So that education piece is important and valuable, and parents can do that too. There's lots of good information on the internet. There's lots of resources out there that parents can look up. But I mean, part of the problem is we've really normalized adolescent drug use as a rite of passage kind of thing. But if we can avoid initiation of drug use till they're like 18 or 19, then a huge percentage of the problems that we're seeing now are going to disappear. But it's a pediatric onset problem.
Right. Yeah. I mean, just during that phase of puberty and the frontal cortex going through its own, development, like without any influence of outside substances, is probably difficult enough, as an unaware, young person themselves, and even for the parents. I think educating parents around just the natural development, of their child's brain is super important to understand their behavior, right? And what's sort of expected, outbursts and rants and rebelliousness, and what is, requiring like a conversation and education. And this is why I say it's one of the most important topics, because it's the beginning, of so much of what, our problems in society and addictions and recovery is.
Yeah. So Rand and I went to a Health Canada summit 2 years ago, right before COVID. It was actually the day before Canada shut down. And we got flown to Ottawa to sit through a harm reduction summit. Recovery was nowhere in the 2-day program. And I remember being frustrated with Rand because a lot of the conversations from the podium with some global experts, they call themselves, talking about how scare tactics don't work and we have to tell people how to use safely, and that's the only thing that will work. I remember, a friend of mine here, the founder where I work, David, said, everything works. And if showing a scary picture of somebody on crystal meth to a teen might work, it might not work, but it does work for some people. So we need to try everything in our arsenal. We can't just, say, there's a lot of people that find out drugs are bad and don't do drugs and go to university. And so how did that happen? But do you have the same fear I do, where it's like, it's not even being said that marijuana is bad anymore? It's like, it's almost like it's organic. You should buy it at the farmer's market.
Well, yeah, and it's the same. It's very similar to our relationship with alcohol now. Like, alcohol has been legal for a long time, and so alcohol was the drug of initiation for years for most people, and statistically, about 20% of people will run into some degree of problem with it. Some of them would self-correct, and about 15% would end up with us, and marijuana has become the same kind of thing. Plus, we went through a really long period of the marijuana advocacy movement, pushing it as medicine. And so that really corrupted people's capacity to look at that drug. So I was just doing a workshop yesterday with with a group of sort of 19 to 20-year-olds that basically had been kicked out of school and were trying to re-enter. And I did an afternoon teaching them about cannabis. And, you know, the comments from the kids were, that's why I feel the way I do. Maybe I need to change. Because, you know, from the inside, when we start to use drugs, we don't notice how it's changing us. We just see what we like about it. And typically that like is around stress management and covering up insecurities, because marijuana in particular is a huge emotional impact, because the highest concentration of cannabinoid receptors are in the limbic system, which is our emotional core. So it just flattens out our emotional response to stuff. So not only do we not care about the things that are bothering us, which is the attractive piece of it, but we stop caring about everything. And so, you know, teaching people about that and helping parents understand that that's one of the risks of that drug is valuable. And so the other thing, I'm hard to shut up, Terrence. Deal with me.
You're the guest.
The other thing that I talk about a lot in the book is what we can do instead. You know, what parents can start to do to help kids learn how to emotionally manage. And you know, the mindfulness movement has done some really good work at helping people understand that limiting of your stress response system and staying present. And you know, if parents take the time to learn that themselves, if they don't know, but start to help their kids understand that, then they can start to learn at home some stress management stuff. Like, you know, I do parent workshops too. And, you know, a kid will come in and talk to me and I'll say, how are you doing? And then there'll be like 20 minutes of blah, blah, blah. This is going on, this is going on, this is going on. And I'll say, well, do you talk to your parents about that? Well, no. Well, how come? Because they don't listen.
So
like they interrupt, they tell me what to do, they don't respect me.
Right. Or yeah, they're going to feel that shame or that judgment, or that, you know, just that, you know, the disappointment, rather than just a parent be someone that is an ear, you know. And I mean, we talk about unconditional love from parents, but I don't know whether it's just the generational thing. As soon as you become a parent, you become your parent, and that just takes over. And so drugs are bad. Never do it. You know, anytime you come to me with a problem, I'm gonna make you feel bad about it, and not seem like a parent's doing anything wrong.
Yeah, I just gotta stop for 1 second. Though, Darren, exactly what you said, like, why can't we say that? And I'm not gonna, like, everyone, like all of our haters anyway that exist on Twitter, it's like, you know, that's shaming drugs are bad. Like, I've been to Portugal and we've talked about this on the show, and Rand knows all about this. Portugal and Switzerland, like, if you actually investigate Switzerland, if you're a heroin user in Switzerland, like, you're actually considered lower class. They give you safe supply, but in no ways can you smoke heroin on the sidewalk next to a bakery. Like, you'll get arrested in Switzerland. You're looked down upon. Same thing in Portugal. You light a joint in Switzerland up, and like, people look at you like you're a POS. I remember interviewing people and they were hiding smoking their weed, and I'm like, why are you hiding this? Like, it's decriminalized here. And they're like, well, you can't smoke it. And it just, like, we've been lied to, like, because decriminalization and prescription heroin is in Europe, it didn't make drug use okay. It's actually the opposite. There's more stigma in Europe with the use of drugs than there is here in Canada. And it's absolutely mind crazy. If you actually spend 2 minutes get outside of the tourism stuff and actually see what's going on in addiction and mental health care in Europe. And people have come back here and said, oh, like I really thought when I went to Portugal that like drug use would just be everywhere and it's totally okay. And it's you can't even use drugs in front of a harm reduction clinic. So that's the route we've taken here, Rand. You've been here a long time, in addiction healthcare. Did you see a change in your career where drug use was looked at as, if you need help, we'll help you, but it's not okay to do drugs, to just, yeah, man, like use drugs.
And that change evolved with sort of evolution of harm reduction. When harm reduction started, it was, we're going to keep you from dying and try and get you into help quick. In the early stages of harm reduction, that made sense. Because some people can't just stop. And, and if you're in a really difficult situation, if you're homeless or whatever, being sober isn't all that attractive to begin with. But somewhere along the way, harm reduction evolved to we should just give people what we want or what they want. And I was at a similar conference to that one you were talking about, and I said, what we're doing is we're keeping people's brains not functioning properly, and then we're listening to what they are asking for. So we're taking a brain that's been dysregulated by substance use, and we're continuing to give them that substance use, but we're saying, okay, well, what do you want? I would just want more substance.
Oh, that was me. I'm gonna.
Yeah, let me. So I said, really, what we're looking at is a brain issue, and if we are in the business of do no harm, we've got to take a really serious look at this. And I got accused of being reductionist. Like I was making it too simple, but it really is that simple. And I mean, you're saying the same thing. Yeah.
I'm going to show you an example. All right. So I got diagnosed with diabetes, and everyone around me is like, you need to slow down on your sugar because we care about you. How many pops did you have today? And this is going over some time. And my doctors, don't eat sugar. I'm out for dinner with some people, and that comes up, and they're like, there's a talk about it, like you shouldn't drink pop with your dinner, and maybe you should only have half a dessert. But it's very consistent in my life, people telling me to reduce my sugar intake.
Because they care about you.
Somebody put this on my desk today.
Yeah.
Can you see it? Oh, it's
gummies.
Like a whole bag of gummies. And in the back of my mind, the first thing that comes to me is all this chatter of don't eat sugar. Sugar's bad for you. You can get really sick. Sugar's bad. And you know what? Like there's an honest, conscious decision to not eat this whole bag before the end of this show. There's that conscious thing going on. I feel like, because when I got into recovery over a decade ago, that conversation was still there. Don't do drugs. Drugs are bad for you. And my employer, you're going to lose your job if you do drugs and all this. But now I feel like it's okay to do drugs. You have a right to do drugs. Drugs should be paid for. It's because of trauma you're doing drugs. And I don't, if I had a bag of dope, it's like that conscious decision that this is bad for me is disappearing. And that's a simple way I think I can explain as an addict, not somebody with a PhD that did research, like somebody who actually, is around dope would be able to like comprehend an example of. It's like, no one's telling me this is bad for me. If people were like, hey, Giuseppe, eat all the sugar in the world, we got a pill for you that you can eat that bag plus dessert plus ice cream, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to eat this whole bag of candy and get ice cream. So why is that so hard to comprehend amongst Canadian healthcare workers?
Well, part of it is just lack of education and lack of understanding around what a substance use problem is. I mean, there's still that stigma-based belief that people should just smarten up and quit, and they're choosing to do it. And I know I did I talk about this in the book. I did a eulogy at a young guy's funeral who overdosed, And I said this fellow had a disease of choice. He had lost his capacity to choose, and that's really what substance use does to us. But it's interesting because I've been the drug and alcohol consultant in Regina Catholic Schools now for 20 years. I've got to get them amazing credit for supporting this program. So from September to June, I'm actively working in 5 schools, doing individual work with kids, helping them look at, where do they want to go with their lives. I've had over 300 kids voluntarily go into treatment programs and detoxes. And initially when I started, there was, we can't talk about this stuff in school. And I said, this is exactly where it starts. And if we don't talk about it, it just continues to get worse. So they left me alone, which I got to give them credit for. It kind of let me do what I needed to do. And within about 2 years, the conversation changed from kids hiding what was going on, and whispering about what's going on to coming up to me in the hallway in front of 100 other people and saying, can I talk to you? Because maybe I'm smoking too much dope. Or and teachers, instead of shaming kids, would direct them to me and say, so and so is like, he's sleeping in class, and he he used to be an okay kid, and I don't know what's going on. So I did a lot of work educating the teachers about what was going on too, and what I try and do with that book is sort of compress 40 years of work. Actually, it's getting closer to 50 years of working with adolescents, and trying to help people understand what it is that we can do to help them redirect things, help them change their outlook on this stuff.
So what is that? What are, I mean, let's not use, I hate to be, general in these questions, but because, every family and individual has a very specific, influence, but what is the normal, quote unquote, family or parents' responsibilities? What is their fault that, like you talked earlier about not listening, being that sort of detached sort of parent? Like, what is it that it's these people, the mentors in these young people's lives? What is it that's their fault? That's like, it doesn't matter what the, what the truth is, what the damage of early marijuana use is. Like, what are the parents doing or not doing?
Well, typically it's not being engaged with their kids. It's not giving them emotional intention. They'll drive them everywhere. They'll take them to hockey. They'll take them to baseball. They'll take them to dancing. They'll take them to whatever. But there's not that fundamental conversation, sitting down and saying, how are you? And then modeling how to answer that. Like, this is what kind of day I had at work. This is what upset me. This is how I am managing that so that I don't do something that's not good for me. And teaching kids how to identify how they feel and process that. You're talking about, you talked about adolescent brain development. Like, there's 2 really fundamental processes that are going on. One of them is myelination, which is the cementing in of important social learning. And the other one is pruning, which is getting rid of ideas that don't work. And drug or alcohol use hijacks that instantly. And so it prevents the brain from learning how to emotionally respond to things. And Giuseppe, you've seen lots of people come into treatment when they're 35 and they're emotionally like 14 or 15, because that's when they start using. And
yes,
so
it's definitely,
it prevents emotional growth.
So
We catch up on that.
Right.
eventually. But
So we've got a comment on Facebook saying, okay, but kids just don't want to listen. So, I mean, it's a theme throughout this interview. It's like, how do you talk when kids don't want to listen? But part of my idea, and then you as the expert, Rand, can add to it, is just the continuation of the same conversations until it either sticks.
well,
I mean,
and it needs to start when they're 2, not when they're 16. Like if you haven't really paid any attention to them till they get into trouble, they're not really interested in listening. So that
Yeah.
that's a
That
good
was
point.
my
eh?
point at the top of the show, as far as like it's past that point,
Yeah.
So just back to like, we're all 3 people that have worked in the healthcare field. Like, we get, what Giuseppe's analogy with the gummy worms is. We get it. We get it, how damaging, this message is. But do we have a basis when, mom and dad's having a beer after work or a glass of wine, or dad's in the garage, having one of his anxiety smokes, that there are aspects that make marijuana medicinal? Like, is there a point of trying to instill that that's all BS to a young person when that's like, it's literally all they see, and they're just going to look at you like you're an idiot, like you just got a beer at the restaurant? Do you know what I mean? Like,
some kids will say that to their parents and call them on that, which is valuable.
It's hypocrisy, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Kids can see that.
And so, I mean, parents need to look at themselves too. And I mean, once you're 14 or 15, you're going to make your own choices. So like I said, a lot of this relationship stuff has to start early. And I mean, if you look at the research around good therapists, good addictions counselors, whatever, primary thing that makes a difference is the relationship that's created between the practitioner and the client. And that's exactly the same for parents. I mean, if you're yelling at somebody, they're just not going to listen. So, love works in exactly the same brain pathways as drugs do. It becomes a significant part of our reward system.
So I want to talk about the book, Grant. So the book, okay, is called.
Well, that's all I've been talking about.
I know, but Which Way to Turn? Let's get your book out in the show before it ends. So Which Way to Turn: Understanding Adolescent Substance Use. So obviously it's a guide for parents. So it's meant for parents with kids that are possibly still using, but also parents that got kids in.
Yeah.
I don't know, Giuseppe just glitched.
Shows up there.
It says a valuable read for anyone working with or living with a teen, period. It doesn't say with substance use. It doesn't say, just living with a teen.
Because it talks about what's going on in a teen. And I mean, and I've had lots of people who are in recovery read it and found it incredibly valuable because it really helped them understand the evolution of their problem. And they didn't really get that before.
Do you think whether it's the counselor or the parents, do you think we are afraid of, relating to or going back to what our issues were at 13, 14, going into high school? I mean, it seems like when I think about what my biggest fears and anxieties were in high school, I can relate and identify with so much of a youth today, like already,
well, I mean, that really hasn't changed. I mean, the externals have changed, but the internals are the same.
Social awkwardness, puberty delays, bullying, trying to fit into a certain clique, not dressing according to the mainstream at the time. I mean, all of these things cause massive anxiety for a young person who doesn't have a sense of themselves just yet.
Yeah.
And I think so much is like, so if we just balk, like as parents, and just like sort of, excuse their complaints or their behaviors, or, why aren't we just looking to what our stuff was? Are we afraid of that?
Well, yeah, I mean, parents in lots of cases want to create an image for their kids that they're really good parents and they didn't have any issues and stuff like that. But but that's an ego thing,
right? And it's so typical too.
Well, it's really common,
right?
And so they don't want to air their dirty laundry with their kids. But I mean, I talked about what had happened to my kids, when they were kind of 12, 13, so that they'd get a sense of maybe you need to be careful about this stuff.
And it humanizes you.
Yeah.
That has maybe just been the sort of the rule maker and the authority and, the provider, as you will. It humanizes your relationship with your own children when you not saying to go into complete and utter detail, but
no, I mean, there's some things they don't need to know, and lots that are helpful to know.
That's right.
But I mean, Darren, that really speaks to an honest relationship with your kids, and paying attention to them and spending time with them, not just taking them from one place to the other. And I've done a lot of work with around social media dependence with kids and parents, and one of the things that came up with a lot of kids is, I've lost access to my mom, or I can't get my dad to talk because he's on his phone all the time.
The parents on the phone, not just the kids, right? Yeah.
And so we all really need to pay much better attention to what really matters. Like what do we want? What's most important? And if you're a parent and you're worried about what's going to happen with your kids, then let them know that that you don't want them to do that. Like Giuseppe said, it's absolutely okay for a parent to say, I do not want you drinking or doing drugs because it's not good for your brain. I don't like that. I'm not going to be okay with it. And that's not shaming. That's telling them that they matter to you and you want them as they are, not somebody who's just trying to do what everybody else is doing. And I've had lots of parents who say, well, I buy my kids alcohol because I don't want them standing out in front of the liquor store.
Or let them drink at home or have their first use at home.
And I say to them, so what you are saying to your parents, don't like it when I say this, but I say, what you are saying to your child is that I know that you're not emotionally strong enough to handle life on your own, so I'm going to give you a chemical crutch.
And I'll be,
because that's what we're doing.
That's really difficult, because
that's the perspective.
I mean,
because that's exactly what we're doing.
That's true. That's true. When in intention is we're making it a safer environment, we're supervising, like there's a lot of rationale on what what the alternative is, that's better. But the way you present it like that has to be taken into consideration, that's also what is happening.
I mean, is it fair to even say, just, call it simplistic as well, Rand? Like, are we just losing common sense here? It's like, just, because my kid's having a glass of wine, at Christmas or whatever holiday you celebrate, dinner with all his uncles and aunts. What's the big deal? Obviously, if my kid's going to be going and drinking the whole bottle, like, I'm going to have a sit down and talk with him because it's common sense. I mean, is that what we're losing? Is just common sense in the whole thing? It's just like, this can't be okay. This is okay. I mean, really, there is personal choice there on what common sense is. Obviously, if you're scraping the skin off your face because you think there's bugs in it because of the crystal meth you've just done, common sense is you probably shouldn't do that, whether or not you're an addict, addiction, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I think that's
just
common sense.
Are we not allowing for rites of passage, traditions within the family, experimentation as youth? Like, there has to be an allowance for some of that.
Well, okay, Darren. So some of that is culturally normal, but the thing that we really need to look at and understand is that 70% of the population can do that and get away with it.
Yeah.
They'll do it once or twice, they'll get a reasonable response from it, but it doesn't really become a problem. There's about 30% of the population that are much more susceptible to developing a substance-related disorder because of adverse childhood experiences, because of all sorts of things, different kinds of trauma.
I'm not liked for this comment, but this whole idea of cultural appropriate use of psychedelics, because cultures have used this, thousands of years. I don't really buy that, because when they used this thousands of years ago, there wasn't a McDonald's and a Burger King and a Walmart down the street.
No.
Like, people were, in their culture, immersed in their culture. They lived off their land. They cooked and ate everything that they gathered. They didn't, have something come over from, another country in a flat deck truck. Nowadays, people are culturally expropriating the use of this medicinal medicine, because you do it, and then the next thing is you're wearing designer clothing and driving a Beamer, and it's just completely not a statement that I like to, because we've had them on the show before, people that use medicinal medication and so forth, that's culturally, and I just thought to myself, but is this the right use of this medication? Because you can't be able to go for a week holiday and absorb yourself in someone's culture and then leave on a first class ticket. It just doesn't make any sense. I don't know how somebody gets well on that. So I wanted to touch on, we got about 10 minutes left in the show, and I wanted to just, because of our experience together, Rand, you're obviously have a national presence, all different provinces. We just had an election, Canada. So for people that, really, to treat addiction, you need a localized intervention. But the reality is the national model is what really provides services to a loved one. So how does a family, navigate what's going on in this country with the people that have money for private treatment and the people that don't have money? Huge question. There's only 7 minutes left, but really, what's a mom to do? Obviously, buy your book and read it. That's the number one thing. So go to the bookstores.
That's not going to hurt anybody.
Yeah. So, but like, what is a mom? What's she gonna do when her kid's doing fentanyl? Like, let's go right to it. The kid's doing fentanyl. What does she do?
Well,
She's 17.
She needs to get a hold of somebody in that area that understands how the system works and what's going on, because that's an extreme problem for people. I probably get like 5 or 6 calls a week. So and so is having trouble. I don't know what to do. I phoned the health department and they just gave me somebody else to phone. So like right now, we're in a huge problem in this program. I'm in Saskatchewan. One of our treatment centers had a fire last Christmas and it's still not reopened because they're running into zoning issues and people with pitchforks who don't want you in our neighborhood and that kind of stuff. So right now there's at least a 3-month wait for publicly funded treatment. And I said on another radio show here a couple of weeks ago, if you were having a heart problem and you were told, well, you got to phone this place every day before noon, and we might get you in 3 months, like people would be storming the legislature. But we're still stuck in that thinking that somehow or another people with substance use disorders or addiction or whatever you want to call it don't deserve to be treated the same.
Yeah.
And so often So often my first question to somebody when they call is, okay, there's two options. We can look at out of province. You're going to need like $30,000, or we're going to have to figure out how to manage things here. And some of them say, I don't care how much it costs, let's do that. And other people, then you start some really delicate case management and trying to get, if it's an opiate issue, you try to get them into a RAM clinic and get them on some medication therapy to stabilize the situation. But my goal is always to try and get people into drug abstinence-based recovery, because I think that's when we become real and authentic.
And
but
I just want to throw in that scenario, they're looking, or let's say they found something for their kid, and now they're just going to go home and wait for the institution or the recovery, the treatment center to do their job and have a non-drug addicted child come home, and that's that, and then get completely angry at the fact that things haven't changed. Like, how much emphasis do we put on that parent while their kid is away to find treatment, to find therapy, to find counseling for themselves, to look at?
Well, I put lots of pressure on them, because, and I'll say, because this came out of somewhere. The substance problem came out of somewhere. And if you put that person back in the same somewhere, likely the same dynamic is going to cause the same kind of problem. So everybody kind of needs to look at getting some help to change how they're thinking, what they're doing.
And I would just invite any listeners at this point to really just absorb that for a second, that potentially this problem that is your child's, that you're finding a solution to, is a great deal of a responsibility of your own, and how difficult it is for a 40-year-old adult who's going to work, paying the bills, coming home, taking care of business, and to actually admit or identify that they've lost something along the way that they've been responsible for. And I mean, I think that's, I think that's a huge part of this conversation today. And yeah.
And at the same time, the parents have to be looked at with love too. And what I often say to kids is, your parents are doing the best job they can. Absolutely. Like they're not getting up in the morning, writing out a list of 15 ways they can cause you trouble.
That's right.
They're doing exactly the best job they can. And often that's exactly what happened to them when they were growing up. And you said that earlier.
Yeah.
And
there's a thing that happens when you get into recovery. Like I never for a minute ever thought my parents had the best interests for me. Like I grew up thinking they always had it in for me, you know what I mean? Causing me a headache and heartache and problems. And then, I got into like step 8 and step 9 and, did some work and not right away. It took a while. And then I had this aha moment. It's just like they did the best they can. Like, I mean, I just think of 18 years old, moving from Italy to Canada, brand new country, don't speak the language, working in a factory. Like, could you imagine what they went through? And here's me just, expecting Disneyland trips every damn year, like I never thought about it. And that's what's going on in the minds of people that are, in and out of addiction treatment and services. Like you think it's a drug problem, but really it's so much more than that. Like when I had that real revelation, like it changed me at the core. Because it wasn't just my mom. It was like everything. It was the government. And like they weren't on my resentment list anymore. Like it was just like such freedom. But if you were to tell me that when I was using dope, I would have been like, what are you talking about? Like if I go downtown East Side right now and go to people and say, so, to have these conversations, like, what do you think of your family? You're going to hear all the sub stories, and then,
Yeah.
we need to give people a break from that psychosis to really get an understanding of what life is about. And teenagers can do it. Last Door's youth program is celebrating 25 years this year.
Mhm.
We're doing 25 stories for 25 years. And like, these kids are coming in messed up on weed. Messed
Well, I
up,
know, like,
Brad. Messed
oh,
up in
you don't
psychosis,
have to
no other
tell me.
drugs. And marijuana's legal now, and all these promises of money and taxes. Ain't nobody paying for kids going to treatment on marijuana. Like, they have to
No.
pay. They have to pay.
And
And people just, they get mad at us, but it's just like, no, like, your kid is smoking marijuana because he's been told it's organic and natural. He's in drug-induced
yeah,
psychosis, and the government ain't going to pay for his treatment. And we don't all work for free. Somebody's got to pay the bills. So
yeah.
yeah, you have to pay for treatment. And then everyone's shocked. And they're like, oh, we didn't realize that's how this works. It's just like, yeah, that's how it works. And it's just sad. It's unfortunate.
Well,
And
it is sad
yeah,
because I mean, your whatever treatment you're getting for diabetes, you're probably not having to pay out of your
I don't pay
pocket.
anything, nothing.
No,
And I'm told
and
not to eat sugar by the
yeah,
healthcare
and
people.
yeah, and in lots of ways, those two conditions have some similarities
Yeah.
because it develops through
I gotta say this,
something
Red.
that
We have 2 minutes left. I remember I answered the phone, and this woman spawned off on me. She was a social worker, and I don't know why she started went off crazy, like her guns were lit. She had a youth client, and I picked up the phone, and I couldn't stop her, and she's like, all it is weed, and the parents are forcing him to stop weed, and like this, like, weird world out there where a social worker is playing Trump over the kid's parents. The kid was living in a bush in a tent, homeless,
well,
smoking weed,
yeah,
and the social worker saying the parents are
Yes.
being a horrible parents by forcing him into rehab. It's just like, who's your boss, lady? You're talking to the wrong person, because I can't help you clinically, but I'm going to try to get you fired. Like,
Well,
So,
and I think
so
that's a big part of the show where it's like, yeah, this is a very serious topic. Whatever the substance is, for, like you said, the 70% may not have those outcomes, but for 30, it needs to be taken with seriousness, and we need healthcare solutions for that. But also, like, read a book, mom and dad, like, find out what you can do rather than just pawn off on something or someone else to fix this problem. That's so much of it. Yeah, it's that hard work. I mean, if you're currently using and you're not working, and you're struggling and at a poverty level, like, I mean, there's so much more involved, but I mean, there's just so many conversations that I've personally had in my life where it's regular hardworking people, and they just want to send their kid off to fix that problem that they clearly can't deal with. And I think, that's why I was saying at the top of the show that this topic and this book is going to be, invaluable to so many people out there that are just wondering right now and asking those questions,
yeah.
and confused.
And keep asking those questions. Let's keep talking about it. What you've heard here, take it with a grain of salt, or take it as your life depends on it. Everyone's right, and everyone's wrong. That's the way I like to look at life. So, Rand, thanks for being on our
Okay,
show.
thank you.
Darren, awesome to see you this Thursday. You're listening to Talk Recovery Radio, coming to you live here on Facebook. And Rand, where can people find your book and more information about you?
There's online, there's online versions. If they go to my website, drugclass.ca, there's a picture of the book there. They can click on it, and that'll get the order started. There's a contact us link if they want more information. There's tons of information for parents about how to kind of help their kids. Lots of self-care videos that I've done. So it's just drugclass.ca is the easiest access.
Talk Recovery Radio, brought to you by New West Recovery. See you next
Thanks,
Thursday,
Darren.
everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, man.
Bye.
Bye-bye.